just 9 days to the much talked about presidential and National Assembly elections, and it's coming so closer. And even at a time when everyone is talking about the importance of getting your vote count in this particular election. They say the choice now lies with Nigerians. It's either you choose to sell your conscience or you make your voice count for our collective future. I'm counting on you to make it count this time as we look forward to a free, fair, and credible electoral process. I'm joined this morning by one of those people who took advantage of the Not Too Young to Run Act, which of course was passed into law sometime last year, and he's running for the Federal House of Representatives, Ikole-Oye constituency in Ekiti State, under the platform of the KOA party. Olumuyiwa Asko Babalola, good morning and thanks for joining us on the program.
Good morning to you, Nifemi.
Glad to have you come. So how old precisely are you?
I'm 34 years old.
34 years old, okay, and you are perhaps the youngest candidate
in my constituency.
In your constituency.
Yes.
Beautiful. Now let's take you back to 2015, where you were actively involved in campaigning for the All Progressives Congress at that particular time, and right now you are running on the platform of KOA. Some would say you look rather too young to have changed party in a haste. Can you help us understand what really transpired?
Well, I was never part of a registered member of APC. I rooted for the candidates of President Muhammadu Buhari because I believed in him a lot, like a lot of Nigerians did way back. And so it was all about him. I was never a registered member of APC. So KOA party is my first official party. At
what point did you determine to go actively into politics?
Well, after the first 7 months of this current administration, after the 2015 elections, I studied the body language of the administration, and I thought it wasn't what we wanted. It wasn't exactly what we expected. It took about 6 months for the president to select the ministers, so it began to seem like they had no plans. Every other thing on their manifesto was just pure paperwork. They had no real concrete plan to get the ground, going. So, and I've always wanted more for my country, as a matter of fact. And I, thought to myself, I'm tired of being a spectator. I want to be part of the system. I want to contribute to my country. And I thought it was time for me just to, encourage the young coming generations. Because I've always been a very big critic of the young generation, our generation. We are too laid back for me. And I feel that it's time somebody stands up for something.
For you, is it a try at something new, or you are really contending in this election? Because when you talk about inspiring the younger generation, how ready really do you think a 34-year-old is to win a seat at the Federal House of Representatives?
Well, for me, I would say one of the biggest tactics this old generation of leaders, one of the biggest tools they use on the younger generation is that you don't have experience, you're not ready. They make it look all sort of like a big deal. And for me, it is not a big deal. If you want to campaign in an election, go out there, meet the people.
But experience matters when it comes to legislation. They talk about the fact that in the House of Reps, for instance, there will be over 300 lawmakers. It would require some level of experience in being able, not only having bright and fantastic ideas, as regards lawmaking, but also being able to lobby with your colleagues and understanding how it's been done in the House.
Well, you would agree with me that you do not have to become a horse to be a horse trainer. Experience, when you talk about experience, the old people who claim they have experience. What is the experience they have exactly? If you would ask me, Nigeria is not where it's supposed to be. The only experience I would say they have is the experience at filling the youths, filling our generation.
So why the House of Reps? One would have thought that you're just starting out, right?
Yeah.
Your road into active politics began just a couple of years ago. This is your first elective office.
Yeah,
why not try it on the smaller basis? I mean, maybe a councillor or a chairman?
No, not at all. I wanted
or even
a
an
position
aide to an established politician.
I wanted a position I would be able to effect the change that I dream of, the genuine change that I dream of. I don't want to be somebody's puppet. Why would I want to become a local government chairman when I know the local government does not have an autonomy?
How effective do you consider this to be? If, for instance, you win this election, your party might not be in the majority, and they say at the House where you intend to go to, majority have their say. I mean, the majority have their way.
Yeah.
What minority gets at best, it's their say. You know, they just can come up and talk about the brilliant ideas. How do you intend to pass bills if you win election as a member of the House in the minority?
Well, that depends on my power of persuasion. And at the same time, I understand that the House is more or less like a house of cards. And we have our own strategy. Whatever bill we are proposing to the House, we're going to be carrying Nigerians along. It didn't take a House of Rep member or a senator to get the not too young to run bill to be passed. So I believe Nigerians, they have a say. Nigerians have the power to influence what goes on in the House. It's just a matter of, you know, putting all your efforts and the attention into it.
Let's talk about how well prepared you are, not only for this election, but for the task ahead in case you win this particular election. How would you say life has prepared you for the role of a member in the House of Reps?
Well, becoming a member of a House of Rep, the basic logical thing, your duty, is to speak for the people and to look at your society, one or two things that are lacking, and you know, contribute to it. There's no big deal about all those things. I've seen a member House of Rep, you know, that said things that my 9-year-old niece wouldn't say on TV, not to talk on the floor of the House. So it's no big deal. I've seen the old generation, the people, senators, House of Rep, I've seen them put up a lot of attitude that I don't believe someone of that status should put up. I've seen people say things, I've seen people with opinions, with perspective that shouldn't belong to the 21st century. So it's no big deal. We are the new generation. We are the one making things happening in the private sector. As a matter of fact, we are the one driving the economy of the country, not the old cargoes. Once you're 60 years old, your innovations, your creativity begins to wear out.
Not many people will agree with you as regards
so
that.
it's part of nature.
The U.S. president is way in his 70s, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And just like many other leaders in the world, they even say it's like wine. The older it gets, the better it becomes.
You're right. But the thing is this, you would have to reach out to the younger generation for ideas, for innovations. They are the ones who are going to leave the future, not you.
Your constituency, the Ikole Oye constituency, correct me if I'm wrong, that appears to be the constituency of the sitting governor.
Yes.
And of course, we understand how more powerful the APC appears to be getting in that particular state. More members of the House of Assembly decamping to the ruling party. What are your chances in this election?
Well, permit me to use this opportunity to call on the INEC chairman to please, in the interest of the country, in the interest of democracy, in the interest of a free and fair and credible election, I call on the INEC chairman to please postpone the 2019 February 16 elections.
Why precisely?
Not, well, the reason is simple. I cannot understand why a nation would conduct an election when registered student voters cannot vote. I call on INEC to postpone the election until the federal government and the ASU, until they come to a logical conclusion on the ongoing strike.
But how come, they say, it sounds like someone crying more than the bereaved. We've never had student association come out to say that because ASU is on strike, or
Yeah.
indeed we have been disenfranchised and we won't have an opportunity to vote. Oftentimes, even most students have to travel back to their constituencies to vote in elections.
How many of them would travel back to their constituency to vote? How many of them? There are hundreds of thousands of youths that are going to be disenfranchised. Take, for instance, my constituency.
The logic really is that if the schools are on strike, the
Yeah.
students are supposed to be back to their constituencies.
How do they move on election day?
Of course, they are back at home, and the expectation is that perhaps many students even got registered at
Yeah.
home and not in school.
Is that a fact or is an opinion? That's not a statement of fact. That's an opinion by anyone who says that. Take, for instance, my constituency. I have a university. We have a university in that constituency. That's University of Oye-Ekiti. There's no way I would walk into that institution and walk out of that institution without having anything less than 5,000 votes from the students. Now the students, they're out of school. They're sitting at home.
And this for you is a statement of fact that most of those students are registered in your constituency.
Yeah.
Even when most of them perhaps are not even from that area. The only thing that brought them there is schooling.
Well, there's no law that says you must be from certain area
To vote in that
to
area.
vote in that area. So for that's your place of residence, that's where you walk, that's your station. And wherever you register, that's where you can vote.
But if this is going to be a big challenge, how come we've never had any student union, no student body talk about this?
Well, for me personally, that's why I'm beginning to feel it's more like it's looking more like a tactical plan by some selective few who for a fact have been holding this country to ransom. They simply do not want to give the younger generation a chance. Going by INEC's declaration, I think we have about 84.2 million registered voters, and about 60% of that the youth's voters. So I'm beginning to think it's a deliberate ploy to cut down.
Well, you know, another interesting fact to note here, Muyiwa, is the fact that schools are usually on break during elections. So this is not an exception, really, relative to what has transpired in previous elections. Universities usually will go on break for, you know, elective exercise like this.
Every election has its own peculiarities. In this election, we've seen a lot of younger presidential candidates, young candidates like myself. We've seen the likes of Shina Fagbero of Kowa Party. We've seen Chowore. We've seen Christian Mogalu. And I think some people, my opinion personally, I'm beginning to think some people are concerned about how much influence the youths might have on this forthcoming elections.
Are you one way or the other already accepting defeat if this election is not postponed? Do you foresee a colossal loss on your behalf?
I'm not accepting a defeat. I just see...
If this election is not postponed?
If this election is not postponed, I'm not...
Because you seem to have painted a picture that, oh, the bulk of the people who were supposed to vote for me are not currently on ground.
Well, that vote is supposed to be the icing of a very tasty cake for me.
Okay.
So it's not like I'm conceding defeat. It's my stronghold. You understand? Every candidate had its stronghold, have its selling point, have its own audience. And it's my stronghold. And like majority of the young candidates out there, the presidential candidates out there, I think it's going to really, really, really affect.
Help us understand your point precisely. What would be the ideal situation, especially where the students are concerned, that will ensure that most of them are not disenfranchised in this particular election?
Postpone the elections until the federal government and ASU comes to a logical conclusion and student gets back to school to vote. You cannot, you cannot rip them off of their constitutional rights.
Or why not say, call off the strike before the election? Should it be the other way around?
This moment, if the ASU decide, if ASU or the federal government comes together and they decide to call off the strike, the election is just about 8 days away. No student is going to resume back to school until after the elections.
So are you saying that this, one way or the other, in your opinion, ultimately truncates the not too young to run act?
That's the fact.
As it were.
That's a fact. I'm beginning to think it's a deliberate attempt to limit the youth's influence on the forthcoming election.
It sounds like you totally just nullifying the population of young people who are not in school. There are artisans who are not, students in tertiary institutions.
I'm not nullifying them.
Who are also capable, who are also potential voters in this election.
Well, the fact that some people are potential voters does not give us the right to disenfranchise, the other kind of people.
It's all right. Let's talk about your constituency. What have you been able to identify as the major needs as we count down to this election?
Well, first of all, I would have to make it clear to you, I'm not a fan of constituency project. I don't go crazy for mega projects with mega kickbacks. I believe in empowering the youths. In my constituency, the only form of business, the only form of our livelihood is their teachers, civil servants. There's a low level of business activity in that constituency. And all over the country, being a House of Rep member, you do not only serve your constituency, you serve the country as a whole. And all over the country, we've identified areas we tagged as the hub zone, which is humanitarian underserved business zones. And we are thinking of initiating a bill called the SBA bill, the Small Business Administrator bill. The essence of this bill is to help small and medium-scale enterprise spring up in local areas, because we have people. Take for instance, in my constituency, Koleoye, how many of the young guys doing 1 or 2 little businesses have their businesses registered? A lot of them do not have all it takes to operate a business, to grow a business beyond, just a means of livelihood. So the essence of the Small Business Administrator bill is to help our small businesses grow. In the Small Business Administrator bill, we're going to be asking the federal government to allocate 10% of its procurement budget to each and every constituency in Nigeria.
How really does this work? Are you asking federal government to give money to small business owners, because that appears to be already being done as we speak right now with the trader money's effort?
Now, the trader money thing, the only issue I have with it, when you're giving loans out, when you're giving stipend out to small businesses, there should be some form of, it should be, those kind of loans should only go to formal businesses. I mean, formal businesses, do they pay tax? You don't just give out loans to people, businesses who are not registered, people who don't pay tax, that you don't have their records. It should be formal businesses. Do you think that's why they are small-scale
businesses? Because in the real sense of it, small-scale businesses do not have, they are not registered.
Then what's the assurance that you go to the market, you give a market woman 20,000 naira to help a business? What's the assurance that she doesn't go out there the following day to you know.
How does your bill now helps the poorest of the poor?
Now,
because they seem to be at the lowest ebb
exactly
of things. They might not be able to have registered business like you're talking about.
Now,
or that business might not even be categorized as being formal.
Okay. We call it the hub zone, and we are going to have, for the first 1 year, when I get into office, we're going to exercise the SBA bill. So the success that we record from this, we are going to exercise it in my constituency first before we present it to the House. And the success that we come up with is what we are going to present to the House.
I'm trying to understand precisely what this bill entails.
Now, under the hub zone,
how it impacts
on
the small businesses.
Under the hub zone, we are going to reach out to small businesses, including the welders, artisans. We are going to reach out to them, make them register under the hub zone, and in partnership with the state government, we're going to act the state government.
What form of empowerment are you looking at? Funding? Giving them loans?
Funding, trainings, and giving them, the SBA is going to act more or less like an admin structure for small and medium scale enterprises. We help them, you know, structure their financials, every other things that they need when it comes to administration, administering their businesses.
And you're looking at these on a nationwide basis or just for your constituency?
On a nationwide basis. It's something that has been tried in the U.S. in 1979. It's just something that we thought we can adopt, and that will blend well with our country.
So you founded the League of Young Leaders.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Well, League of Young Leaders, it's about creating a platform for youths all across, not just Nigeria, Africa, young leaders to relate, share ideas, share, you know, support for one another. It's just a platform to, you know, because I remember when I was going to start up into politics fully, I remember one of the difficulties I faced is getting information, getting ideas, getting support, both financially, you know, but morally, you know. I witnessed a very, very, very difficult, you know, time getting up on my feet and saying, okay, I want to go into active politics. So I thought of
also providing support for all the young Nigerians or Africans in this.
Nigerians and Africans.
And Africans. Let's talk about financial support for this particular election. So one of the challenges with young aspirants or young candidates like you is having enough money to run a campaign process. What has been your experience?
Well, it's been very, very difficult. One of the problems I have with the Not Too Young to Run bill is that...
which is now an act.
Which is now an act, which is now an act, is that the Not Too Young bill seemed to focus on the age barrier. The age barrier has never been the problem. The reason why youths, why the female gender do not participate, you know, as much as the male gender in Nigerian politics is the monetization of the political system. It's not really about the age barrier. So if truly we want to get youths into active politics, if truly we want to make youths take their future into their hands, we have to work on tackling the issue of money politics.
Already there's a law,
politics.
According to the Electoral Act, there's a limit to which each party can spend, you know, in an election year, depending on what office that they are vying for. But then you also have a GoFundMe account. There are many people who are saying that not many candidates have really been transparent and accountable, because when we hear stories like this, it has always been, oh, there's no fund, there's not enough money. But then how transparent has been that your account, where people seem to have been, where you've solicited for funds over the past months, how transparent, how accountable has that been?
Well, for every donor that has donated to my campaign, we've been carrying them along with how we've been spending the money. We've been transparent, 100%. And this is not just about me. this is just, you know, the way it is when it comes to core party members. The party makes it mandatory for you to follow a due process, to be transparent to your donors. And this is just the way it is for my party and every other candidate, you know, contesting under my party.
Interesting. And then I'm also considering right now, would you say that you've gotten enough money to run this campaign?
Well, I haven't gotten enough money, but with the little we have, we've been able to make a lot of impression, and we've gone a long way. Though we are not so, you know, lousy like the so-called big political parties. You know, there are different ways of fighting a war. Either you go confrontational or you go with the guerrilla war tactics. I would say we've adopted the guerrilla war tactics.
What has been your strategy in this election?
Well, house-to-house campaign, and at the same time recruiting members underground, including their members.
Including their members.
Yes.
It's really easy to say that, but then
it's not. But it's a statement of fact.
Yeah, but they say it is the results on election day that really show how effective, you know, the styles and strategies we've adopted during the campaigns have been. Yeah,
it is the result at the end of the day. It is the result, to be specific, it is the result of a free, fair, and credible election.
Well, what has the feedback been like from members of your constituents?
It's been fantastic, because you hardly see young people try to contest in an election in my constituency, because we have a constituency whereby you hardly find someone of 40 years old who is rich enough to say he or she wants to go into an election, to contest in an election. It's very difficult. So when the young guys, the young girls, when they saw me, when they heard about me, they were really, really motivated. They were really, really happy that this is what we've always wanted, not the same old cargoes, you know, coming around. All they do is promise, and nothing to show for it.
But would age be a factor in this election? Because, you know, there are people who would tell you for free that being a younger candidate doesn't make you more trustworthy, doesn't make you more capable, doesn't even mean that you're going to do any better than the incumbent or other older candidates in this election. What would you say is your selling point? What you consider to be an edge over your other contemporaries?
Well, two major things. I would say the biggest thing my father gave me wasn't the house, wasn't any of the material thing. It was the name he gave me. The Babalola family is very popular in my constituency, and that is one. Secondly, our manifesto. We've been able to sit down with people in gatherings, on one-on-ones, to relate our manifesto to the people and to make them understand.
It's all right. Let's take a break here. I've been talking with Olumuyiwa Asko Babalola, and he's a candidate of Kowa Party running for the Federal House of Representatives seat in the Kole Oye constituency of Ekiti State. Well, I'm scheduled to also have Wale Ogwade, President of Voters Awareness Initiative, on the program this morning to talk about voter education as we count down to the election on 16th February. I understand it's talking a terrible hold-up along Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. So that means I'm stuck with Muyiwa for another couple of minutes. But we'll be back with more right after this. Stay with us. Glad to have you join us again. It's 9 days to the Presidential National Assembly election, and preparation, no doubt, is in top gear. And we'll see campaigns all across Nigeria, politicians trying to convince electorates to look their way at the poll. Interesting developments also ahead of the election. Thankfully, the PDP is not opting out of the peace accord. And of course, the Kaduna State Governor seemed to also shed more light on his position as regards international observers in this election. Uyiwa Asko Babalola is a Kowa party candidate for the Federal House of Representatives, Ikoli Oye constituency in Ekiti State. Thank you for staying the course in this program.
It's a pleasure.
Let me take you up very quickly on some of the issues ahead of the big one on February 16. How would you say the campaign tone has been relative to 2015? You were also very active, supporting the APC at that time in the 2015 election. How would you, really gauge the tone of the campaign activities at this time relative to the one we had 4 years ago?
Well, I think Nigerians are beginning to get more conscious of what happens in the political sphere. And I think it's becoming a little bit tasking for politicians to convince voters, because over the years there have been lots of deceits, by the same people. So I think the politicians, they're employing more tactics and more reasonable tactics in engaging the electorate.
Would you say that these have been issue-based? The kind of headlines we've had on the tabloids recently, the kind of issues that have dominated public discourse. Would you say these are issues that could have helped the electorate make better decisions ahead of the polls? Well,
it's not what I expected, but I would say it's been better compared to what we saw in 2015. Initially it didn't start off well towards this election, especially with the old drama surrounding the article, traveling to the U.S. I didn't understand why that had to make headlines, But I would say it's been better, we're improving, but that is not what we want.
Well, the one challenge that appears to have stuck over the years is the fact that most of the stakeholders don't seem to have the needed trust in the umpire, talking about INEC. We've had opposition parties talk about the purported plans to rig elections. We've even had the NSA talk about certain elements planning to disrupt, elections. The River State Governor recently also made mention of that, the possibility of having staggered elections, has been purported by some other elements. How healthy would you say all of these are, as we count down to the big one?
Well, those kind of statements, they're not too healthy for us as a country, for our reputation as a country, for the reputation of a democracy. Those kind of statements, they are not too healthy. And that is one of the reasons we say we don't fancy this kind of leaders who make reckless statements, who do not consider a whole lot of things before they make such statements. I think INEC, over the years, they've come a long way. They've really done well when it comes to, especially when it comes to a violent free election. I think INEC has really come a long way. But what we are looking at, what they've been struggling with, is organizing a fair and credible election. Which is one of the reasons I made a declaration earlier on that, if the election has to be free, if it has to be fair, the election needs to be postponed.
Of course, the only reason you seem to have given is the fact that tertiary institutions, especially the universities...
We're talking about over 1 million student registered voters being disenfranchised.
I think we discussed that earlier, but you mentioned the credibility of a poll, and perhaps that is why we have quite a number of international observers for this election. There's the European Union, there's the US, the UK, there's the Commonwealth Group, and quite a number of others. How do you, what exactly is your expectation of them? Because just recently, there was the public debate of of whether or not they have the capacity to meddle in the Nigerian election?
Well, I think they're observers. I don't think they can influence the election in any way. They are just mere observers. But what I do not entertain is when international bodies or some countries make some certain statements.
Let me just hold you for a bit to take this call. Good morning, okay. Divine. Divine is calling in from Makurdi. Good morning, are you there?
Yeah, good morning, Femi, and good morning to your guests in the studio.
Good morning to you, sir.
Yes, I want to, first of all, I want to congratulate your gentleman in the studio that is trying to be a House Representative member.
Thank you very much,
sir. I want to encourage him to, put more effort. Even if he did not make it this time around, he'll keep on pushing.
Thank you very much.
I want to make an example for the precious things we find on earth is from the deep. The more you keep on digging deep, the more you keep on until you get it. Are you getting what I'm saying? So it is not easy, but you have to keep on.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask him a question.
Okay.
What is his position about the comment that RFI made?
Well, I think it was a reckless statement, but after a while, he came out to, clarify about that statement. I think it was a blunder by him. He's a man I fancy a lot, but at the same time, I think too much confidence, too much power makes you say the wrong things, which you really don't mean.
It's all right. So earlier we were talking about, the involvement of international observers. A couple of months ago, or maybe just a couple of weeks ago, when the issue of suspending the CJN, was heated up, the US and the UK made certain statements that people who are found to foment troubles in this election, perhaps their visas are going to be withdrawn and all of that. Some would say that such statements doesn't sound like, the kind of statements you make to an equal or sovereign nation.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not a fan of such statements. I believe if there's any international body, if there's any country that have the interest of Nigerians, of Nigeria as a country at heart, you should be fair in your statements, and you should alter whatever statement, whatever position you take. You should accord the same respect which you would expect from us. And,
let me take this call from Ikeja very quickly. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Nifemi.
Good morning. Welcome to the program.
And good morning to Mr. Babalola.
Good morning to you, sir.
Nifemi, I think this material in front of you is a good one for the House of Reps. It's good that he's not saying he wants to be the president first or he wants to be the governor first.
Thank you very much, sir.
It would be a good thing to see a site at the National Assembly so as to create a forum for a transition. But starting from governor, starting from president will just not work. There is still a little gap. The young ones seem to be shunning the parties that the old ones belong. You cannot take over from them unless you first of all infiltrate them. If you create a demarcation, their own and our own, you can't win them. They have the resources, they have all the structures. First of all, walk into their hearts in their parties. They will begin to feel you as their candidate. When you get there, you show your true self. Or if you shun them and they have the structures, you need the structures to get there. Look at, initially we are asking him, you are coming from a constituency where the governor of the state comes from. The governor will want to select those that will come to the House of Representatives and want to influence it. How are you going to fight him? But if you were to be in his party and you win yourself into a nomination, that's a good beginning. You get there. When you get there, you become yourself in the House. That is my candid advice for the young ones. I wish you well.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, George, for your contribution. So George is suggesting that what you should have done was to have walked in the path of the giants and learnt the rope and probably get some tutelage and walk a success, perhaps be a successor rather than trying to build trail the blaze, or how do they put it?
Yeah, I appreciate.
Do you agree with that?
No, I do not agree, but I appreciate his opinion, because before I made up my mind to join our COA party, it took me a while. I studied all the political parties, what they stand for, their principles, their ideologies, and I told to myself, there's no, if there's any political party that does not have its foundation rooted in the belief to advance a cause that is just and that is moral, then there's no, it is not a political party.
Are
it
you
is
sure
just a mere conspiracy to
it's
seize
not
power.
it's not the amount of money for the expression of interest form that chased you away from the big parties? But before you answer that, let's take this call from Dokwemi. Good morning, Yakub.
Yeah, good morning, Ifemi.
Good morning.
And good morning to your guests.
Good morning to you, sir.
Foremost, Ifemi, I think kudos should go to whoever sent a bill of not too young to run to the National Assembly. I think we should applaud that very particular group. And then, so the kudos should also go to Mr. President for signing that bill into law, for allowing a very good materials in front of you there to aspire to be a House of Representatives.
But Yakub, Babalola is saying now that it appears the limitation is not even the age, but then the the whims and the caprices, the capacity, the financial wherewithal, for instance, to run and compete in such an election like this.
Pardon me, I did not hear you clear, but if I should guess what I'm trying to say is that maybe in terms of the political party that is trying to run under, as the last caller rightly said, I will advise Babalola personally, that's my own opinion, that he should be able to infiltrate all these big political parties, because you need the structure, as the last caller said earlier. Because if you don't have the structure, don't forget about people are telling us that we don't need money. Politics is money, big money, because you are going to spend a lot of money to campaign. In fact, to even pay the polling unit people that are going to help you to monitor your vote in the polling unit. But I would say that, if you said something earlier about the statement that El-Rufai made. In fact, I totally disagree and then condemn that statement in total. But we should be able to look why he made that statement, as your guest rightly said earlier. Because before he made that statement, there is something that all these foreign people said before now, that Nigerians should be able to look inward. Why are they saying such things? So not even El-Rufai alone. Some big on a political party, I will give you a typical example. The chairman of PDP, the chairman of PDP, I heard that, I watched him live, says that if President Muhammadu Buhari won the election, there will go to be a war. Why that? Why that? Election will come, election will go. I believe Nigeria will still remain. So Nigerian citizens are going to go on the 16th and 4th. For whoever you know that is going to take you beyond the level that we have today, it is next level, because we are moving towards direction that we'll be able to say, yes, I'm a Nigerian.
It's all right, Jacob. Thank you very much for your contribution on the program. Thankfully, these guys are not calling from a constituency, so I hope that you're not discouraged already. But then it's important to note at this time that politicians and indeed stakeholders in this election must watch what they say. Exactly. Because comments and whatever it is they're saying at this time is very pivotal to how peaceful this election is going to be. Don't you agree with that?
Well, I do agree, and that's one of the things I was saying earlier. You don't join a political party just because it's big, just because you're so hungry for power. I'm into politics. It is not a means to an end for me. It is my way of contributing to the development of my country. You don't have to be in a place of authority because before you influence people positively, or before you influence a nation positively. We're trying to sell an ideology. We're trying to sell a principle that the young generations
Are you saying that that is your primary goal in this election, to sell an ideology, not to win?
To win?
All right. Let me take this call from Ikoyi. Good morning, Peter.
Yes, good morning.
Welcome to the program.
Okay. Not too long to young is a very good idea. Like the last two callers said, Mr. George and the other man, that you must belong to a big political party to make all this one your voice heard. And he also said that he's run his check on his parties, that the ideologies are not good enough for him. That's why. But let me quickly say this. In all those parties, don't forget, all these big politicians we are calling, they agree with every perfect day. They came in with their ideology and ideas based on who we are. With the government, with all those ideas over the time. Now with new innovation, new thinking, new ideas coming from young men, you people must stay in there. When you are in that kind of place, you must see other young men like you with the same idea who will form force together to push out some of those forces. You understand? So this too much political party is not even helping us in this whole thing. Because a man that is as bright as you are, a young man that is as bright as you are, contesting from PDP or APC right now, we know we are having more stand people to represent the old one in the assembly. So by the time maybe the election did not go well and they don't allow you or something went wrong, I don't pray that for you, I wish you the best. Even when you go to court, you know our system for now. Then now come to talk to the hate speech and violence speech or talk from the government. That is the wrong thing for a government to say to a foreign country. The foreign country never said we are going to invade you people if anything goes wrong. It's just an observer. They are observing the election. If anything goes wrong, because they are independent body on their own, they can condemn the election. They can say this is not right. They can decide to say, okay, because you did not do this right in your country, we are going to put social sanction on you. This is the only thing they can do. Which we that knows how other countries do wrong, we welcome that idea. So that our people will start to make things right. Like he said that they should they should say to us what would they expect us to say to them. What are they expecting us to say to them? Did their people run to us? Any white man that comes here is an expatriate. Any of our people that goes anywhere, it will start from the beginning. You have to learn something. Because that is how they reduce us to.
I think you made your point very clearly, Peter. Thank you very much for your contribution on the program. Let's touch on a couple of issues before we go. Very quickly, there is the issue of the duplicity or the multiplicity, rather, of political parties, especially in this election. There are over 90 of them. Close to 71 political parties are fielding candidates for the presidential election. That even makes the voting exercise itself a little bit more cumbersome. So voters now have to pay attention to where their party is on that ballot paper and what finger to print with without voiding the votes.
Yes.
INEC seem to have told us now that the ballot paper will come rolled. There's a lot of fear about ink smearing from one corner to the other. But how effective do you think the system really is as we come down to this election?
Well, we have just about 90 political parties. In the United States, we have over, I think, 400 or more political parties. 90 is not too much. The people should have options. 2 parties or 3 parties cannot. Nigeria is a big country.
Are these viable options? Because recently, a presidential candidate, Obieze Kwesili, stepped aside and she was talking about the need for a coalition. The former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, a long time ago talked about the need for a third force. We seem to have the number, but do we have the viable alternative that seems to have gained as much momentum to provide opposition to the main parties?
Well, the former President Olusegun Obasanjo, made a statement about us, the need for Nigeria to have a third force. I don't think he's a sincere man. I respect him a lot. I respect his age. I respect his time of service in the military. But I do not think he's a very, very sincere man.
Let me hold you very briefly to take this call from Abia State. Good morning, Okorafo.
Good morning, Mr. Nipumi. Good morning, our guests in the studio.
Good morning to you, sir.
I want to find out from our guests. Good morning. See, In Nigeria today, the political parties we have, looking at the Nigerian population, is too small. Now, what do I mean is too small? In as much as it's too small, you look at the level of education in this country. Now, what I want to find out from you now, in Nigeria today, the 7th assembly has gone. We are now in the 8th assembly. Most of the problems Nigerians are facing today is at least the National Assembly members, those of them who are there. Now, look at the rate of unemployment. Look at the rate of poverty. Look at the rate of our educational sectors, what is happening. Now, what do you think that Nigerians should do? This is 2019. Because I'm asking this question because if we still go back to our former way of let them go back and continue, we still be facing the reality. But what do we do now? At least you are an authority and an expert. Now, 2019 is around the corner. Don't you think, to me or to you, or that it's not possible for Nigeria to say, let all this presently, let them go and rest. Let's bring new crop of national assembly members. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Thank you, Korafo, for your contribution. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, now, if I'm to present to you an analysis, we have about 84.2 million registered voters. And like I was saying earlier on, about 60% of that population are young voters. Now, if the young voters come together and say, we want some people, new faces in our political system, there is no way on earth, there's no amount of money, there's no amount of vote buying that is going to, you know, conquer that movement. But I know it seems a bit difficult for the young voters to decide because we have Christian Mugalu, we have Showore, we have the presidential candidate of my political party, Mr. Shina Fagbero. You know, I would have loved a situation whereby all of them would have, you know, come together before now and would have come to a consensus and decide one single candidate. You know, it would have been fantastic. You know, that was what I expect of Madam Obi. But it seems everybody wants to be in the picture.
Let's take this last call very quickly from Enugu State. Good morning, Chuku.
Good morning.
You have just 30 seconds. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yes, please, I've been following your conversation, and I want to say to your guest in the studio, with all I've been hearing about, some callers are saying that he should go to other PDP or any other bigger parties. I want to tell him that going to those parties does not mean that he will go and win. So it is better he start building his own political party, because those parties will fail. And even if he goes there with this his age, they will not recognize him, because he may not even be able to do what they want him to do. So it's even better for him to be in that party.
I think you made your point very clearly. Chiku, thank you very much for your contribution. We have to go, but let's wrap this. The issue of vote buying seemed to have become a huge menace in the recent elections we've had last year. INEC has come up with some, you know, tactics now, restructuring the ballot box, the ballot cubicle, ensuring that people do not go there with their phones and all of that. Some have said that the best we can do at this age of electronic transfer is to appeal to the conscience of the voters. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, the vote buying, it's a very, 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 very sad thing for me, because logically, you don't need a soothsayer to tell you that once.
Have you had that experience on the field? Constituents asking you to give them money?
In the last election, I was on ground at Ekiti State in my constituency. I saw, you know, all those things, and police, the security people, they looked away. It was really, really sad. You know, it wasn't people making decisions out of their conscience. You know. Do you see things change for the better in the next couple of days? Yeah, with people like me coming into the system, I think a whole lot is going to change.
Oluboyiwa Asko Babalola is the COA party candidate seeking a seat at the Federal House of Representatives for the Ikole Oye constituency in Ekiti State. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the program this morning.
It's my pleasure.
And I wish you all the best in the election.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's our show for today. Thanks for being a part of it. We'll be back tomorrow with another exciting one. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. God bless Nigeria.